Hello everyone. In this video we're going to be talking about the graphs of sine and cosine, and I first want to go over the form, and we've already been over this, but the plus or minus in the front, if it's negative it's going to reflect over the x-axis. The a, the absolute value of a is the amplitude, meaning that it has to be positive, and this is how far up and down the function is going from the midline. And then b is the number of waves in 2 pi or 360, or you could look at it as the period, which is 2 pi over b, and that's how long it takes for one wave to be completed. And then the d on the end, y equals d is the midline, and that's what cuts the graph in half, hot dog style, so long ways this way. We're not going to work with the c value, the phase shift, because it just gets a little bit complex there, so we're just going to focus on the amplitude, the period, and the midline for these examples. All right, so let's move on down to this very first example, and what we're going to do is we're first going to figure out what is the midline of this graph. So what's going to cut this graph in half long ways? So if I'm looking at this graph, I can see that this graph is being cut in half long ways by the x-axis. So y equals 0. This is going to be the midline, so y equals 0. That means that we're going to have plus 0 on the end, so that's our first thing there. The next thing I want to look and see is the amplitude, or I could see if this is sine or cosine, it doesn't really matter. But let's look at the amplitude now. This is how far up and down it's going from the midline. So I can see that this function is going up 4, and it's also going down 4 from the midline. So since this one is going up 4, down 4, that means our amplitude is going to be 4. All right, and we do need to see also if this is sine or cosine. So what we're going to do there is we're going to look at the y-axis and see if this is a slant or if it's a little mountain thing. So if we look on the y-axis, I can see that this is slanted upwards. That is going to be sine. If it was at a mountain or a valley, then that would be cosine. But since it's in the middle, this is going to be sine. So let's go ahead and start writing out our function. We're going to have y equals. Since this is a positive slope, then this is going to be positive sine. So we're going to put the amplitude first, which is 4. And then sine. Okay, and we need to figure out what our b value is. So we can look and see how many waves happen in 2 pi. So how long does it take to get back to its original position? Here's the starting point, and it gets back to that same upward slant right here. So this is 1 full wave. Then you keep going. 2 full waves. 3 full waves. And then 4 whole waves. So we had one wave here. And that doesn't look exactly correct, but 2 waves here, 3, and then 4 in 2 pi. Okay, so since we had 4 waves in 2 pi, that means that our b value is going to be 4. Or you could have said the period is pi over 2. So if you do 2 pi divided by pi over 2, you will get 4. So either way, you want to do that there. But there are 4 waves in 2 pi, so we're going to write 4. Then x, and now we're going to move on to our number that we're adding on the end. But since it's 0 as the midline, we're just going to leave that as plus 0, which is the same thing as just leaving it the same. Again, the only thing here is that if you wanted to work this out, it took pi over 2 for this to happen. So this is your period. So you could have done 2 pi divided by pi over 2, and you would have gotten 4, which is the number that goes there. So 2 different ways of solving for that, but either way is going to work. All right, so let's look at another example. All right, here we go. And first thing that I want to look at is the midline. So what's going to cut this in half long ways? And I can see that this is at y equals 2. This is always going to be a y value, by the way. We're also going to look at our amplitude. How far up and down does this go from its midline? And I can see that this graph is going up 3, and it's also going down 3. Okay, now I need to look and see if this is sine or cosine. And I can see that on the y-axis, this is at a peak. So this is going to be cosine. All right, so cosine is at the peak. Sine is in the middle on the y-axis. So this is going to be cosine. So let's go ahead and start writing this out. Y equals, the amplitude is first. And since this is a peak and not a valley, this is going to be positive cosine. So it's going to be positive 3 cosine of, and we want to see the number of waves in 2 pi or 360. Or we can say, what is the period? And then we'll divide that by 360. Or 360 divided by the period. All right, so here is where it gets back to its original position. And this is happening between 60 and 120. So that is going to be at, let's see, 90, I believe. Yes, 90 degrees. So what we can do is we can say, okay, since the period is 90 degrees, that's the period. Okay, since the period is 90 degrees, we can do 360 divided by 90, and 360 divided by 90, that is going to give us 4. So what I should find is that there are 4 waves in 360 degrees. So 1, 2, 3, and then 4 here. So you can see that there are indeed 4 waves in 360. And by the way, this is what a wave looks like. 1, 2, 3, and 4, like this. All right, so there are 4 waves in 2 pi. So we're going to do 4, and then you can write theta, or you can write x. And then we're going to add our midline on the end, so plus 2. Okay, let's look at another one. All right, here we go. And let's look at the midline first. You can see that the midline here is going to be at 0. So y equals 0. Okay, and we also want to look at our amplitude. So this graph is going up 4, down 4 from the midline. Okay, and this is going to be sine because it is going through the middle of the function. And this is a positive slope, so it's going to be positive sine. All right, so this is positive sine. And we do want to go ahead and start writing out our equation. So we're going to do y equals, since this is positive sine, we're going to make it positive 4 sine, and then we're going to figure out what goes inside of this parentheses. So one wave is happening, and it takes 120 degrees to get back to its original position. So this is the period, 120. So we can do 360 divided by 120 since we're in degrees. Okay, and that's really like 36 divided by 12, so this is going to be 3. So what I should find is there are 3 waves in 2 pi. All right, so let's look. 1, 2, and then 3. And I said 2 pi, but it's really 360 if you're looking at it here. So here is 1 wave, 2 waves, and 3 waves. All right, and again, like I said, this is a whole wave. 1, 2, 3, like that. So there are 3 waves in 360 degrees, so we're going to write 3, and let's just write theta now, just because we can. All right, and then we're going to add our midline, but since the midline is 0, then we're not going to add anything. Okay, so let's move on to another example, but I'm actually going to break this video up. So let's stop this video here, and if you want some more examples, please move on to the next video. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Goodbye.